Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are a couple of the amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. This book is called The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love, an Essential Guide. So before I introduce Beverly and Charleen to you today, I want to say a really big thank you to Tina Green, who is the lead author of this collaborative effort on self-love. Tina, you had such a big mission for this book, and the topic is really world changing. And I cannot wait to share this book and these brave words from all of your stellar group of authors that you attracted to this project. Thank you so much for the mission and for trusting me with it. I honestly, you guys, this book, oh my gosh, I keep saying it, this book is a topic that will change the world when people really embrace what Tina's message is about it. So without further ado, who do I have with me today? Beverly LaZar is an artist, writer, who holds space for others to know, honor, and love themselves through artistic practice. And Charleen Michel has more than 35 years of experience in facilitating and moderating discussions. She's the founder and creator of Wisdom Unleashed with Charleen Michel, Paths to Self-Discovery, where she guides her soul clients to discover their inner wisdom and transform their lives. So ladies, welcome. I can't wait to get into this discussion. Beverly, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about your amazing chapter that you wrote for this book.
Thank you. Well, I wrote chapter 12. It's called Collage Dreams, Creating a Life You Love Piece by Piece. And in it, I'm telling the story of, as a creative artist, what happened as I slowly in relationship and then as I became a mother, began to put myself sort of at the bottom, trying to meet the needs of my family, my partner, my life, my job. And in doing that, just abandoning my own creative self piece by piece. So looking at how after my divorce, I had to build a whole life again for myself. And it really took time to spend time building relationship with myself again through my art. And by doing that, by creating and then by journaling and taking time to also just give myself things in my life that brought me joy again, right? Like, and to put myself a little bit more in priority, that is where through doing that I was able to not only love myself, I began to know myself. When I started, it was like, love myself. How can I even love myself if I don't know myself, right? So I really needed to build that relationship with myself again, and I did that through creative practice.
Oh, I love what you just said about that. Like, how can I love myself if I don't know myself truly? I think we're conditioned into ourselves as small people. And then by the time we ask this question, we have no idea who we are, really. What else do you want to say about that for our listeners?
I think that, it's finding those the way for me to know myself was it started simply with allowing myself moments of joy, things that interest me. If you looked at even, say, the collages that I made over a course of 20 years, the repetitive things that would show up were like images of the Northwest, images of water, images of whales. And by making these small changes, right, and giving myself small things like doing bits of art, spending time in nature, listening to music I love, being, enjoying time with my kids and friends in a new way. um, I allowed little by little it space to open up in my life for bigger things that would bring me joy. And before I knew it, after about 3 years, I found myself moving across country to live on the West Coast in Seattle, somewhere I've always wanted to be. So I feel like by allowing yourself the space to know really what your heart is calling for, in time, little changes can become really big things.
I think it's this idea is so important to start with the small joys and let them build. I think joy is the answer, but sometimes it sounds so simple that we doubt it or question it. But I really agree with you. It's finding that. And I was talking to someone the other day, it's kind of making me chuckle because we were talking about this and we basically agreed that if you can't think of anything else, think about puppies. And that would be like an instant into the joy field, right? Puppies. So there's always something, right?
For sure.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to hear more from you in just a moment. Charleen, tell us about your chapter.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. And Beverly, thank you for sharing your introduction with us. My chapter is chapter 5, and it's called Surviving in the Corporate World, How to Listen and Trust Your Inner Guidance. And it's about my corporate life, how I started my spiritual journey. And of course, I also provide some self-love practices at the end of the chapter. In the chapter, I talk a little bit first about my university studies and how proud I personally was to become a researcher and a scientist. I didn't come from a family of scientists, but somehow my passion was always to continuously learn, and it still is today to continuously learn. I also talk about leaving what was probably the best corporate job I ever had to follow my heart and move from the US to Switzerland. It's a decision I never regretted, and it's also allowed me to live out one of my personal dreams. And during my corporate life, I was privileged to work with some very nice, inspiring, supportive people, but I also had people who were behind me and stabbed me in the back, and I kept asking myself continuously, am I in the right place? And I was very good at protecting myself, putting up my shields. My drive came from within, as it did probably most of my life and still continues to be in most of my life. And the last job I had, I asked for. And I was told, be careful of what you ask for because you might get just what you don't want. And that's what happened. I was in a job where I was achieving results, doing what was needed to be done, but there were people there who just didn't like my attitude. And after a while, it took toll on my body. My body started to scream, and it told me I needed to change. I was exhausted. I realized I loved my job and my career more than I loved myself. And a friend of mine said the price is just too high. So I left the corporate world. I tapped into my inner wisdom, and I moved on my path to find joy and happiness, as Beverly said earlier, because that's what I was searching for, things that make me feel good from the inside out.
So I want to go back to a question that you asked yourself, am I in the right place? And I often think that when we're in a state of confusion, asking ourselves like, really, is this it? That itself is the answer. It's not a hell yes, and so it's a no. And so we make it so complicated though. But when I listen to you say that, I'm like, oh, well, she knew. Like this, the minute you asked the question, you knew, right? What else do you want to people to understand about that, how you developed that intuition? Because I know it got a lot better as time went on through your story, which was wonderful, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it did get better as time went on. In fact, I had one of my clients, also a researcher and a scientist. He said to me, Charleen, he said, you're very bright, you're very quick, you know what you want, but also listen to what your heart tells you, what your gut tells you, listen to your intuition. And I had to do that. I had to learn how to develop that because as a scientist, we base our decisions on logical data. But I'm not only a scientist, I'm also a creative. I also love music. I love being in my garden. I love creating new things. So this, am I in the right place? Yes, I knew it, but I was too determined to prove them that I could still do the bloody job, even though I knew myself that I wasn't being appreciated for what I was contributing.
Yeah, it's sometimes a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
So I want to stick with you, Charleen, for this question. I'm going to come around to you, Beverly, for it too. What's the most important thing you want people to know about self-love?
I think it starts with looking in the mirror, being aware of who you are. Because until you know who you are, how can you feel love and appreciation for yourself?
How did
Um,
you how did you get to the next level of knowing who you were? What did you discover in that first layer?
yeah, the first layer actually started very early on in my childhood, discovering who I was. It was with my grandfather when he taught me how to garden. And every time I would be with my grandfather, I not only felt his love, but I felt my own love. I felt bliss. I was happy. I was very content every time I was together with him. But I had to spend more time searching inside. And what I did was I became a big fan of Dr. Deepak Chopra. I got to know Deepak through my yoga teacher, and I started to follow his practices. And he starts asking questions. And when we do a meditation practice, the first question is spend some time just thinking about who am I? And then the second question, what do I want? And then you can go deeper, but you first have to ask those two questions first. And you have to spend time to listen to what your inner soul has to say to you.
Yep, powerful beginning to that practice. And I love that you mentioned bliss, because going back to what Beverly was talking about the small joys. Yeah, you guys, like, what if it's not just small joy, but total ecstasy? What it, like, I'm always here to, like, I don't know, help people understand what's possible. There is this range of awesomeness all the way to a feeling of bliss. Beverly, what about you? What's the most important thing you want people to know about self-love?
I feel like, Charlene, that is totally where we are in alignment of that, you know, like know yourself, right? Who am
Yeah.
I? And, and to honor those things, what do I want, right? I also really resonated when you said like your body was paying the price, it was just the price was just too high of doing the things that were not good for you anymore, right? And I really resonate with that. I feel like I was in very much that place of like overworking, overstress in my job, and to really give space for that, to really pause and ask, who am I, and what do I want? That's so powerful. And I feel like for me, um, as a visual artist, the way I've always known myself was through making art, and then by reflecting upon it and writing about it, talking about it. So from, very young days of making art as a child, making art in school, studying art in school, that's really what gave me my voice. And through a variety of things like the world, I started to shrink that voice back, right? And to reclaim some of that back, right? You have to be kind of bold again to say, like, I'm not going to let all these other things take over my life anymore, right? And to have better boundaries. I feel like I also had to learn better boundaries around being able to say no to things that weren't, like you said, weren't a
Yes.
hell yes, right?
Yeah.
So in learning that is where I found the time and space to allow myself that, and to give myself permission, and to find people and surround myself with amazing women in my life who are, totally cheering me on to do that as well. I feel like having that um, really allowed me to have even more permission than giving it just for myself. So sort of all of that combined, um, giving yourself permission and space to do those things. Yes.
Yeah. I
I
can
think
resonate
I'll,
with that, Beverly.
yeah, and I'm gonna add a ditto to boundaries for this question. The most important thing I want you all to know is that if you're not setting unapologetic boundaries for your own health and wellness, this isn't gonna go well. And so, like, but that I make that sound easy and like a no-brainer, but it's not easy some days, that I know. So, what does that even mean to you? What are the boundaries you're not setting? Where are you just compromising a little bit and that starts to feel not so great. Those are the places to fine tune and then watch what happens, the magic that can happen, you know, from that boundary setting. Beverly, you've touched on this already. Actually, both of you have a little bit, but let's keep going with an idea. Authentic healers and coaches, we know that we don't fix people. We empower them to connect with their own inner wisdom. So would you share one? I know there's 100 ways that you connect, but I want you to go into one. Give us a little window into one practice, one way that you personally practice connecting to that inner wisdom. Yes, Beverly, yeah.
I go outside. I go outside. I find I make time to be in nature. For me, it's sitting, you know, down on our little beach in our neighborhood, even just for a few minutes, right? To just sit and be quiet, be present. I feel like when I would busy myself to the point you turn off that voice, right? There's no space to hear it if there's too much going on. But if you can give yourself quiet moment, whether, you know, a meditative moment when you wake up in the morning, for me, it's being in nature. That's where I can allow that space to happen more easily.
So of course, nature connection, there's so much there. There's the earthing component, you know, so get those bare feet on the sand or the grass or whatever. And then there's that stillness component. And I think the combo is so powerful. Do you like to talk to people about earthing, Beverly?
I just the importance of being and feeling connected and, you know, imagining yourself rooted into the earth is how I would imagine that. And that we are really all one and we are part of the earth. And I think when we connect to that, it goes back to that, you know, what we are seeking is also seeking us.
Yeah, really powerful ideas. Charleen, how about you? Share one way that you personally practice connecting to that inner wisdom.
Yeah, it's similar to Beverly, connecting to nature. It's for me, this is my biggest passion. It's where my heart rests here, is in my garden. When I go out into my garden, I have a huge passion for gardening. It's something that I've taken a lot of courses on. I've learned a lot about how to do things, but I've also experimented as a chemist. I like to experiment with things. I like to play around with things. I live up here at 1,800 meters above sea level, about 6,000 feet. And people tell me English roses won't grow here. Well, yes, they will, because I have them in my garden. And I just love connecting with them, not only because of the challenge of growing healthy plants that smell good, but I also enjoy just watching them, sitting there and meditating then as I watch out on my garden and just closing my eyes and going into that place of stillness and peace. So I combine my garden and my meditation practice. And in the summertime, also my yoga practice. My sun salutations are done outside, facing east as the sun is coming up.
That's a beautiful practice. It's funny you're talking about your roses again today, which I love in envisioning. A friend gave me some little samples of essential oils, and this rose one was the first one that I don't know, it's the first one I reached for, right? I put a little bit on my wrist and I kind of just buried my nose in there. And it brings me to the point of the smell being a direct brain connection for people who would like to change up the energy. It is so powerful. So essential oils are a beautiful way to do it. And you have to experiment. In some weeks or months, I don't like the rose. But other times I can't get enough of the rose, right? And I'm just like breathing in as deep as I can. So there's something about that. So the roses are, they're just so beautiful to look at, but the smell gets me every time.
It gets me too, Laura. I have to say, I can't get enough of it. My perfume is a rose perfume, and I wear it all year round. I just can't get enough of it. And there's some roses I don't like. I don't like the musk smell of a rose. I like the sweet, flowery, aromatic smell that just goes right through me. It gives me goosebumps.
Now, if we're going back to talking about nature for a minute, if you love the beach or if you love the mountains, right now you could imagine the smells of both of those places, the beach, the salt, the seaweed, the whatever, the sand, that, there is definitely a smell to that. The mountains, the forest, the trees. I grew up in California where there were a ton of eucalyptus trees, and we would always talk about going hiking after a rain with the smell of the eucalyptus trees all around us, right? And I think I want to nudge people here back to the small joy and all the way to the bliss. Both of you gave us the ideas of that. What's that one small way you could just have it right now? Well, you could put a little essential oil on your wrists and, you could be at the beach or wherever. But I love that idea. I love simple tools, which kind of gets me into this next question. Charleen, awareness, which is what we're talking about, we're dropping golden nuggets of awareness today, but it's a lifelong practice. And getting to the point that you can fall in love with yourself can be difficult. It's sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. But what I'd love is if you would give our listeners another easy entry point. You have an established meditation, yoga practice that you've been going at for a while. But if you were talking to a brand new beginner person on the path, this journey we're taking here, what would be one simple thing they could start with today?
I think it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, being outside in nature. There's so much beauty in the world around us. There's also a lot of ugliness in the world around us as well. But there's so much beauty in the world around us. And my eye is attracted, I'm an optimist. My eye is attracted to the things that I find beautiful, that I find calming, that I find grounding. But it requires us also to take some time, have some patience. Don't try to just rush outside and get that experience, but really take that walk on the beach or take that hike in the mountains, and just take in the simple pleasures of what nature has to offer us.
And if you're stuck in an apartment with no way to get to the beach or the mountains, buy a plant, y'all.
Put up a picture.
Yes. So I want people to have all the ways, like if they can't get out and they can't do that, you can close your eyes and you can bring it to you. And some of those guided meditations are fabulous.
Absolutely.
I think one of my favorites is the campfire one, where you can hear the crackle of the flames and you can be sitting around the campfire with your friends and hearing the songs that they're singing. I love going there with some of those. I love that, Charleen. Yeah, get outside, everyone, or get outside in your mind. Beverly, how about you? What's an easy entry point? We talk about it very much like it is easy, but we've been practicing for a while and it gets easier and easier and easier, right? But if you were talking to somebody who is just starting and they really feel the opposite, they feel like it's impossible, what would be one easy way to connect?
I definitely understand and empathize with when it feels impossible. It did for me for many years. I would keep small images of things that I loved. Like you said, you can, whether you close it in your eyes and imagine it, imagine yourself, by the ocean, by wherever you love. I would have small images, small collages, small even a picture. I had a postcard that a friend sent me from the Northwest for years on my mirror, and I would just look at it and be like, someday, and I would just think about it a lot. But I feel like in order also to give space for those kind of things, um, what really I think needs to come as a practice first is to really listen to yourself and observe all the ways that you might be self-abandoning, like saying yes when you don't really mean it, and really starting to tune into, um, where are those places in my life that I'm not being as authentic, that I'm maybe giving parts of myself away for love and acceptance from others. And for me, it was just starting to notice those things that, you know, I could look at this postcard, I could do that, but I would not, that wouldn't even feel possible to me until I started stopping, sort of like that bleeding out of giving away and giving up my own power of who I am, um, by saying yes or agreeing to things when I didn't really, uh, it wasn't a hell yes, it wasn't, this feels right for me to say this. I'm doing this because maybe I want you to accept me a little easier, right? So when I could stop those things, it allowed more space for me to bring in those joys, I guess is where I wanted to emphasize with that. When it feels impossible, that's what helped me make that change.
Yeah, for sure. Charlene?
Yeah, I wanted to add something on this. People think that entering a spiritual practice is easy, but it isn't. I remember when I first started meditating, I started meditating and people said, oh, you need to sit quietly and repeat your mantra or just, imagine a visualization or whatever. You close your eyes, and I could do it for maybe 2 minutes. And then all sorts of other thoughts and activities came into my head. And I felt like, I don't know how to meditate. I can't meditate. I don't have the patience to do it. And in fact, those thoughts that come into your head when you're first starting to meditate is actually a sign that meditation is working, not a sign that it's not working. And you start out with the small bits and you gradually expand your practice. You build your meditation muscle and you get into your own practice of meditation, one that suits you, because there's many different ways to meditate and no one is right or wrong.
Thank you for that addition. In terms of easy entry points, we've been talking about a lot of different ideas. I am going to say write it down as the awareness tool that Beverly was talking about, of your own thoughts, limiting beliefs, things that are going on that might be negative. If you get it out of your head and onto the paper, you can look at it. That means you're separating and you're observing. So journaling has been one of my go-to easy entry points for this self-love journey. It's like, what do I think? What am I repeating over and over? And awareness is everything. With awareness, we have a choice. So how are you going to get still enough, and what tools are you going to use for that awareness? And we could be journaling, and we could be in nature meditating. Sometimes I hesitate to use the M word because people are afraid of it, like Charlene is talking about, but meditation can be something very, very simple, and you don't have to sit on a pillow with your legs crossed and say any mantra. You can just notice the waves, But other easy entry points: turn on a song you love, right? How about one deep rib expanding breath? And right there in seconds is an easy entry point to something different that could actually change the way that your nervous system is responding to what's going on, right? And self-love, as you can tell, is definitely a lifelong journey. I believe we get to a place where we're starting to taste it and it feels uncomfortable and we backslide a little bit. And, I remember mirror work too, looking into the mirror and saying, I love you into those eyes for the first time. I couldn't look into my own eyes for a really, really long time. And this work, like Charlene mentioned, is not easy, but it is so worth it. It is so worth it, life-changing. Beverly, Charlene, thank you so much for what you're doing in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone. Thanks, ladies.
Laura, thank you so much for everything you're doing in the world and supporting us, because it's also amazing.
Thank
Yes,
you.
much. Thank you for having us.
So I know something Beverly or Charleen spoke about today maybe gave you the goosebumps, maybe you're resonating with it. What I know for sure is these books we're creating are way more than just a book. It's a generous community of experts who can help take you on that conversation a little further, answer a question. So drop into the show notes. I have them hooked up with their websites. Go explore what they're doing because it's really awesome work in the world. They're there for you to answer a question. They're there for you to help you, guide you on that next step of your journey. And I'm so grateful to all of the authors in this book for what they're doing for themselves, for the world, and for the vulnerable stories y'all are laying down on those pages. But we also are going to gift you with practical tools and strategies. So you will have a self-love toolkit like no other when this book comes out. Listeners, please remember to join us for the book launch party. You can come and join us on Zoom November 13th, The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love. I'm going to have all the authors with me, and we're going to have a great celebration. The info is down below for that. And if you happen to be listening after the 13th party date, well, that just means that the book is already on Amazon and you should go get your copy. Lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.